What if I told you that the way a man falls in love is nothing like what you've been taught to believe? That beneath the surface of logic and pride lies a heart wired for connection, but it unlocks in a very specific way. This isn't about games or guesses. This is about understanding how the male brain truly processes love and how you can recognize the signs, respond with confidence, and finally feel seen in a relationship that aligns with your deepest emotional needs. Whether you're dating again, navigating a long-term relationship, or simply trying to understand what went wrong, this is the insight you've been waiting for. When a man begins to fall in love, it's not the way we typically imagine. We often assume love is born from grand romantic gestures or the overwhelming pull of attraction. But that's not the case. Not really. A man may be drawn to someone physically, may even become obsessed with that attraction, but he doesn't fall in love because of that. He falls in love when he feels emotionally safe, and safety for a man is something paradoxical. He craves it, but rarely allows himself to receive it. A man is taught implicitly and explicitly that strength equals control, stoicism, emotional self-containment. Vulnerability has long been tied in the male psyche to weakness. So when he begins to trust someone, when he allows someone to see the parts of himself he hides even from his own reflection, that's when something extraordinary begins to occur. That's when his walls begin to shake, when his logical defenses start to falter. It's not a process he decides on consciously. It's deeper than cognition. It's neurological, primal, and emotional all at once. The male brain, when experiencing acceptance in a non-judgmental emotional space, begins to release oxytocin, the bonding hormone. This isn't just chemistry, it's biology meeting belief. And belief, for a man, often rides the line between hope and fear. He doesn't fall in love when everything is perfect. No. He falls in love when things go wrong and you don't run. And he confesses a past mistake or shows you the part of him that doesn't match his curated exterior. And you stay, not to fix, not to pity, but to witness. That witnessing is sacred. And it is in that act, that non-reactive presence, that love starts to root itself into his unconscious. You see, emotional safety is not about being agreeable or overly nurturing. It's about being grounded. A woman who holds space for a man's truth without making it about her, without spiraling into emotional reactivity, becomes a lighthouse in a world where most men are lost at sea emotionally. And when a man finds that lighthouse, even if he doesn't fully understand what's happening inside him, he knows he doesn't want to lose it. That's love beginning, not in chaos or lust, but in stillness. But this kind of safety is rare because many relationships operate on performance. If you do this, then I'll give you that. Conditional affection, subtle power games, emotional scorekeeping, and men, whether they can name it or not, feel when the love is transactional. That pushes him away, maybe not physically at first, but emotionally. And once emotional retreat begins, love has little room to grow. Now, once that safety is in place, you might assume the next step is open expression, deep emotional conversations, vulnerability, but not necessarily, because men don't bond in the same way women do. Where many women are neurologically wired to connect through verbal expression, men are often wired to connect through action, through presence, through doing. When a man starts to love, he may not say it in words, but he'll begin to show up. He'll fix something that's broken without being asked. He'll pay attention to your habits, your preferences, your patterns. He'll remember the way you like your coffee or the exact song that calms you down on anxious days. And this isn't arbitrary. The male brain, particularly when attached, begins cataloging emotional information tied to you, not just to understand you, but to serve you. This is something often misunderstood. When a man acts in service solving problems, taking on responsibilities, even doing menial tasks, it's not just practicality. It's affection in motion. It's his way of saying, I care about your world enough to become useful in it. If you look closely, you'll notice this pattern in nearly every man who has fallen deeply in love. He moves from me to we, not through talk, but through task. It's not that he avoids emotional conversations, it's that his emotional rhythm often flows through action before it manifests in words. This can be deeply frustrating if you're expecting constant verbal reassurance, but it becomes enlightening when you learn to see his actions as language. The man who tightens the screws on your cabinet without being asked isn't ignoring you. He's loving you the only way he knows how. And his heart has opened, but his mouth hasn't yet caught up. There's something primal about this, something hardwired. In evolutionary terms, the male brain was shaped to protect and provide, not just physically, but emotionally. But because most modern relationships lack a language for this kind of emotional action, men often go unseen. Their love is dismissed as inadequate simply because it's not verbal. But when you begin to tune into the way he acts, rather, and how he articulates, a whole new world opens. You begin to see his love rather than wait for it. And he feels that shift. When a man realizes you understand his unique emotional language, you become the first person he's truly known by. And for a man, that is love. That is everything. So he falls in love when he feels emotionally safe. He deepens that love through shared action, not just shared words. And when those two things align, safety and action, you'll witness something profound. You'll see a man who not only opens his heart, but who fights to keep you in it. Because now love isn't a fantasy or a performance. It's become his reality. Respect is not just a pleasant addition to love for a man. It's the core. You could drape affection over him like velvet, shower him with compliments, even offer unwavering devotion. But if he feels disrespected, if he feels diminished, unseen, or emasculated in subtle and persistent ways, he will pull back. It's often not loudly. It's not in an explosion, but in quiet, gradual withdrawal, like a fortress sealing its gates one brick at a time. The male psyche is constructed with deep association between respect and worth. From a young age, boys are taught, whether directly or through the harsh truths of the world, that their value lies in how well they perform, how strong they appear, how in control they remain. He learns that to falter is to fail, and to fail is to lose dignity. So when he enters into love, even subconsciously, he is testing whether this relationship will reflect his worth back to him or corrode it. This is not vanity. It is vulnerability hidden in armor. A man might never say it aloud, but he desperately wants to feel admired by the woman he loves. Not idolized, he knows he's flawed. Not flattered, he can. See through hollow praise, but truly respected for his effort, for his decisions, for the way he tries even when he comes up short. When he feels that, something fundamental in him settles. His guard drops, his affection increases. He becomes more present, more generous, more invested. But the opposite is also true. If he feels like he's constantly being corrected, second-guessed, ridiculed, especially in subtle, passive ways, he won't argue, he won't plead. He'll detach. And that detachment, once it sets in, can be nearly irreversible. Because to a man, being disrespected by the one person he's emotionally vulnerable with is a kind of psychological betrayal. It hits the deepest fear he carries, that love will demand his soul, then diminish it. You see this especially in how men respond to criticism. Most women believe they are offering feedback, insight, or guidance. But the male brain often interprets repeated, unsolicited correction, especially about things tied to his competence, as an indictment, a kind of spiritual rejection. When that happens, he doesn't just feel hurt, he feels inadequate. And inadequacy to a man is poison. If a man feels like he can't win with you, he'll eventually stop trying. And then the cycle begins. He becomes passive, you become resentful, and the relationship erodes in silence. What he needs is not blind approval, it's not subservience, it's recognition. When he opens up about a struggle and you say, I see how hard you're working, or I know you're doing your best, that's oxygen to his soul. He hears You're still a man in my eyes. You're still worthy even now. That kind of respect builds trust, and trust builds love. But even respect, even emotional safety, cannot override one fundamental truth. Timing matters. Or a man can feel deep affection for you. He can be physically attracted, mentally intrigued, emotionally moved. But if he is not in a psychological space to receive love, he won't be able to fully give it. This isn't cruelty. It's not cold-heartedness. It's self-preservation. The male brain is often wired to compartmentalize, to prioritize achievement before vulnerability, to build his fortress before he opens the gates. If he's still at war within himself, battling shame, financial instability, unresolved trauma, then asking him to anchor himself in love is like asking a man drowning to build you a house. He wants to, but he simply can't. And that's the tragic truth many people don't want to face. Love alone is not enough to make a man stay. He has to be ready. Readiness isn't about perfection. It's about willingness. If he's still clinging to the identity of the lone wolf, if his sense of masculinity is threatened by dependence, if he believes vulnerability will weaken him instead of deepen him, then no amount of nurturing or patience will push him over the edge into love. Ironically, he often tests for this very thing. Not consciously, perhaps, but behaviorally. He might pull back suddenly, withdraw emotionally, go silent, not to punish, but to assess, to see, will you react with panic, accusation, or neediness, or will you hold your ground? Because when he's evaluating whether to open his soul, he's not looking for a mother or a fan or a fixer. He's looking for a partner. He needs to know that his moment of emotional weakness will not make you see him as less of a man, that his struggle will not be used as leverage, that your love is not an extraction but an invitation. If you pass that test, not by playing games, but by standing in your own centeredness, you will begin to witness something rare. His walls will lower, not because you forced them down, but because he decided you were safe enough to let them fall. And in that moment, love becomes not a transaction, not a fantasy, but a choice, a real, terrifying, sacred choice, one that rewires the very way he sees not just you, but himself. Because in choosing you, he is finally choosing to believe that being fully known does not mean being discarded. It means being found. There's a widespread misconception, pervasive, really, that men are primarily visual creatures, that their capacity to love is tethered tightly to physical beauty, that what captures a man must be seen, sculpted, styled. But this is, at best, a half-truth. Yes, the male brain is hardwired. When you listened without trying to fix, when you laughed from your gut at something he thought was silly, he remembers those moments the way a soldier remembers silence after chaos. Intimately, viscerally. That's the paradox. The masculine brain is drawn to what it sees, but it attaches to what it feels. And most men don't even realize this until the woman is gone. Then the absence echoes. Not of her body, but of her presence, the peace she brought, the space she made, the mystery she didn't try to explain away. And herein lies a great misunderstanding in relationships, especially when they falter. A man may not chase when he's confused. He may not speak when he's in pain, but he notices. He stores emotional data like a vault, cataloging every time you were his sanctuary or his storm. And when that data forms a consistent pattern of emotional security, something shifts. He stops looking elsewhere. Not just physically, but spiritually. That's what anchors him. Not your age, not your figure, not your ability to please him, but your ability to reach into him and offer a space where he no longer needs to pretend. That experience, once tasted, is unforgettable. It rewires his concept of love. But to turn love into commitment, something more is needed, something rarer still. You must create a bond that is emotionally exclusive, Understand this. A man does not commit deeply, fully, and permanently because of compatibility alone. But compatibility is plentiful. What's scarce is emotional uniqueness. If he feels that what he has with you could be duplicated with someone else, he will keep the door open, even if slightly. But if he comes to realize that the emotional experience of being with you is singular, that no other dynamic, no other woman, no other connection has that precise rhythm, that depth, that sacred silence, he will close the door to all others willingly. And here's where many relationships collapse without warning. A woman may offer love, loyalty, even patience, but she offers it too freely, too quickly, without discernment. And the man does not feel chosen, he feels included, like he's part of a pattern, not the breaking of one. You must let him earn access to the most sacred parts of you, not out of manipulation, but out of self-respect. When you unveil your emotional world slowly, intentionally, with depth and boundaries, he senses that he is being invited into something holy, and this holy space, once entered, is not something he can forget. He begins to experience the relationship not as an emotional transaction, but as a spiritual privilege. And that's what turns love into devotion. That's what shifts him from casual to committed, from distracted to present. But when he can stop performing and still feel powerful, when he can be soft and still feel strong, when he can be seen and still feel respected. And that ultimately is what separates a relationship that fades from one that forms the foundation of a man's very identity. You're not trying to be the most beautiful woman in the room. That is what makes him stay. That is what makes him choose you again and again and again. There comes a moment in a man's journey through love where something shifts, not on the surface, not in how he speaks or even how he behaves, but in how he perceives himself in your presence. You see, a man does not just fall in love with you. He falls in love with the version of himself he becomes when he is with you. That's something almost no one talks about, but it's critical. You can be beautiful, intelligent, loyal, everything on paper, but if he feels small in your presence, if he feels inadequate, judged, or perpetually wrong, his soul will start to retreat. Not because he doesn't love you, but because he begins to associate you with a loss of his own internal integrity. A man bonds most deeply when he feels that he is growing in the relationship, not being shrunken, not being managed, but evolving. That growth isn't always comfortable, but it must feel meaningful. If a man starts to see himself as a better father, a more disciplined worker, a more courageous human being, simply because you are in his life, then his attachment to you becomes almost unbreakable, because now you're not just his partner, you are the mirror in which his ideal self is being reflected. And no man walks away easily from the person who helps him respect himself. This is not about pandering to his ego. It's not about inflating his sense of self-worth artificially. That kind of hollow praise collapses under pressure. Real love does something else. It calls a man to rise, to face his demons, to clarify his values, to step out of the comfort that's kept him mediocre. And if you can challenge a man without shaming him, if you can demand more from him because you see more in him, you become essential to his transformation. But here's the hard truth. You cannot drag a man toward his potential. You can't parent him into greatness. The minute you begin to take ownership of his growth for him, the polarity shifts. He starts to see you as an authority figure rather than a romantic partner. And the attraction dies quietly but surely. What inspires him is not being told what to become, it's being believed in. Belief is powerful, not naive, blind belief, but the kind that sees a man's raw, unrefined character and whispers, "There's more in you. I can feel it." That belief becomes a seed in his psyche. And if the soil is right, if he is ready, it begins to grow. And you'll notice something remarkable. when that happens. He becomes protective, not possessive, not controlling, but protective, not just of you, but of the relationship itself. He'll start to guard the connection like a man guards something sacred, because now it's tied to his integrity. It's no longer about convenience or chemistry. It's about identity. He sees loving you as a moral act, a responsibility that calls him forward. But here's where it goes even deeper. Love, real love, reaches a point where it becomes legacy. And legacy to a man is no small thing. Most men, once they hit a certain psychological, emotional threshold, begin to ask quieter, more profound questions. What will I leave behind? Who did I become? And did it matter to anyone? Love endures is love that helps a man answer those questions. You're not just sharing time, you're shaping eternity. You're influencing the kind of story he tells himself about his life. And if that story becomes rich with meaning, if your presence in his life transforms ordinary days into something purposeful, he will not only love you, he will revere you. And that reverence turns into a kind of sacred devotion that is increasingly rare in the modern world. But that devotion must be sustained. And it is sustained by something that might surprise you. Emotional discipline. See, love doesn't die because of big betrayals most of the time. It dies in the tiny daily moments where both people stop tending to it. A man falls deeper in love over time, not when things are always easy, but when you navigate difficulty with grace, when you can be angry and still be respectful, when you can feel disappointment without collapsing into bitterness, when you hold on to your values, even in conflict. Men watch for this. Whether they admit it or not, they are constantly tracking how safe they are with you, not just during the good times, but especially when the emotional temperature rises. Can you disagree without destroying? Can you confront without condemning? If you can, you become the rarest thing in his life, a person he can struggle with and still feel safe. Because real love, true, enduring, life-altering love, is not the absence of conflict. It is the ability to face conflict without fear of emotional annihilation. That's what he's looking for. That's what makes him choose you over and over again, even in the silence, even in the stress, even when no one else understands why. It's not that you never argue. It's that even in the fire, he knows she's with me. We're still us. And in a world of fleeting desire and shallow validation, a man will guard that kind of connection with everything he has, because when he finds a love that doesn't just feel good, but makes him good, stronger, wiser, more alive, he doesn't walk away. He stays, not because he has to, but because he chooses to. And for a man, that choice made daily, silently, intentionally, is the most honest expression of love he can offer. So now that you know how men actually fall in love, the question becomes, are you creating the emotional space where love can thrive? It's not about being perfect. It's about being real, authentic connection, deep respect, emotional safety. That's what turns infatuation into lasting love. If this spoke to you, if it made you reflect or helped you reframe how you see men, love, or even yourself, then I invite you to keep the conversation going. Drop a comment below. What resonated most? Have you seen these patterns play out in your own life? Like this video, if you found it valuable, share it with someone who needs to hear this. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful insights on relationships, psychology, and emotional transformation. Tell me in the comments, what topic should we explore next? I read every one, and this community grows with your voice, because love isn't just something we hope for, something we build, one insight, one moment, one breakthrough at a time. Until next time, keep your heart open and your standards